All right, it's time for my new favorite pastime. That is answering questions from people's comments. Well, let's see here. There's a good one down here. Ryan said, I was intrigued by the above biblical references to the five senses, so I did a full search and only found this great one in the apocryphal books. They received the use of five operations of the Lord, and the sixth place he imparted them understanding, and in the seventh speech, an interpreter of the cognitions thereof. Counsel and a tongue and eyes, ears, and heart gave to them to understand. Ecclesiasticus 17, 5, 6. Note that this is a book that goes by other names as well. So that's actually not in the Bible. It's one of the apocryphal books, I guess. But I just wanted to point out that there are others for sure. They may not just refer directly to the senses. They refer to them allegorically, but pretty clearly. So to me, this is one of the clearest descriptions. Well, actually, the Thomas Gospel is full of clear descriptions of Jesus talking about non-duality, very specifically. But he talks about it sort of metaphorically, and then the descriptions are clear in the experience to me. So this is Thomas, Gospel Thomas. He said, "Blessed is he who came into being before he came into being. If you become my disciples and listen to my words, these stones will minister to you. The stones will minister to you. There are 5 trees for you in paradise, which remain undisturbed summer and winter, and whose leaves do not fall." Undisturbed summer and winter, leaves do not fall. That the poetic nature of that, pointing to like the non-dual experience, is so clear. And then he says, "Whoever becomes acquainted with them will not experience death." I mean, that's about as non-dual as it gets as far as like a biblical reference. And yeah, to me, it's very clear. But you could argue, well, what are the 5 trees in paradise? But he starts by saying the stones will minister to you. Why would he say that, right? It's not. This isn't animism, right? They don't have like a, as far as I know, an animistic sort of paradigm in religion or whatever. But the stones will literally minister to you. This is talking about deep non-dual realization. So anyway, thought that was super cool. All right, what else do we have for comments here? Go to the top. This is Astronaut Banjo. Good name. I was talking earlier about having a contest for whoever has the best YouTube name. I'm sure we could find some good ones. Okay, next question or comment. Hey, Angelo, thank you for all the videos. Absolutely love to watch them, and they're always so clear, grounded, and heartfelt. I'm glad you enjoy them. Good. Really interested in this topic and have watched or consumed the Non-Dual Gang, expounding both sides of the consciousness coin, including Tony Parsons, Rupert Spira, Swami Sarvapriyananda, Ken Wilber, Ramana, you name it. I also was really curious about the science and philosophy of consciousness before learning about non-duality. Anyhow, I'm wondering if you indulge me in your opinions on a couple of questions. Firstly, I guess the non-consciousness message I hear in some videos, non-consciousness message, okay, can seem really confronting at first. And having had various awakened experiences, seeing thoughts separate from self, unbound conscious awareness, samadhi states, non-dual vision perceptions of objects, etc., I can now recognize, or I have a recognition of no self, or consciousness could be quite readily available, noticeable. I guess that they mean no self, no consciousness. Yeah, it's not really I wouldn't say it's no consciousness. It's just not deriving identity from consciousness, and consciousness not being experienced as a, I don't know how the better word for this, a collating experience. Anyway, yeah, I know what you mean. I suppose then a couple of questions arise, such as, does the illusion of consciousness provide any benefit to the human being? What is it like to not be conscious? Is it like nothing? I'd say it's not like anything that you can put a paradigm to, but it doesn't mean it's like nothing, because that would be a paradigm, yeah? Is this something worth pursuing? Are experiences experienced in any way at all, albeit not combined into a single stream of consciousness? Yeah, it's not combined into a single stream of consciousness. And to say that are things experienced, it's kind of like, what do you mean by experience? Like perceived? When the non-dual realization is clear, it's an experience of mere appearance. Mere appearance is obvious. It's intimate. It's non-dualistic. It's has no essence, clearly. It's neither here nor there. It's non-arising, non-subsiding. So it's hard to say that it's an experience because really it's not. It's too direct to be an experience. Let's say that. But again, it doesn't mean there's quote unquote nothing, right? That's the big fear of the mind, that the mind believes in content. It believes in all kinds of illusions that seem so real to the mind, but it's real in a mental way, not real in a real way. And so the mind perceives a lot of this as a total loss. Like everything's going to go away. But it's really, why is it even perceiving that? It's trying to prepare for it, which it can't do. So it's kind of a null point, all of this, these conceptual questions when it comes down to non-duality. Does that make sense? Perhaps the body part feels sensations, but they are not combined into a holistic global view. Yeah, I feel like you're trying to kind of prepare yourself a little bit, and you can't. Like, I just want to be honest. You really can't prepare yourself for this. But you can engage what's experienced in the moment directly. And you can ask a few questions. Like, is there a perceiver of it? Is there perceptual distance? Does this exist out there or in here? Is there a dividing mechanism and experience that makes things feel like self and other, subject and object? Like, you can ask these kinds of questions, just resting in the experience and noticing what moves through and so forth. Even saying moves through is really not accurate, but it's a way of talking. And be willing to feel the emotion. Again, the what will feel like sensation with a label, maybe, or even a narrative. But you'll know it when you come across it if you're not resisting it and repressing it. And so that's really important, because that's often what causes the polarity between body and mind, between sensing and thinking. And then we default to thinking for a long time. You know, default mode network and all. So, but good questions. This goes on, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. Okay, and then someone says, never an experience of being outside of consciousness looking inside, I agree. Nor inside of consciousness looking outside, I agree. Only experience as, capital letters, consciousness. Not sure. I'm not so sure I agree with that. As this clarifies, and I know you have a lot of clarity, of course. As this clarifies, as I mentioned, you're going to find there's no collating experience. And there's often a lot hidden in the background you don't even realize with that. When you really come face to face with the selfing mechanism and realize what it's doing, it's also creating this sort of substratum of consciousness. And then it says only experience as consciousness of just this in capital letters. Just this I like, right? Just this. But what is just this? Is just this really a sort of universal consciousness? Seems like it for a while, but until it doesn't. And I have this conversation with people all the time, like just messaging with someone today who's going through this dropping of that I am sense. I mean, the very basic I am sense, not a conceptual self or anything. The sense that there's identity in the experience of just this, or in presence. And they seem like the same thing for a long time, but they're not. Not at all. So anyway, good comment. All right. Mitra says, thanks so much, Angelo. You talked about the primary experience so clearly here, but I still didn't get it until the last day of retreat. I will be on it until July retreat for sure. That's the thing that happens, right? Retreats are so much like that. You feel like you're just in this like cloudy, muddy, mess sometimes. You're like, what is going on? And then you, right at the end of retreat or after retreat, suddenly things clarify. Sometimes it takes a little while after retreat. It could take a few weeks after retreat before the dust settles or the mud settles in the water, right? But that's pretty typical. Yeah, glad you were there. All right. This is user XH5VD6WT6W. Boy, do you make everyone call you by your full name. Thank you, Angelo. Very insightful and something to think about, in quotes, on a Sunday. Just talking about this video here. Yeah. Okay. This is R. Becerra, Miami. Appreciate you, AD. Still circling the drain in a burning dumpster and no longer certain seeking will ever end. But in any case, you've been an amazing presence for me and an incredibly clear herald, so articulate, logical, alive with examples. Let's see here. I've been dry pounding the enlightenment corpse for 25 years now with no fruition, and I just wish it would stop. I would stop already. Please, can I stop now? Yeah, stop. Stop, because the effort that you're feeling it's kind of a combination of seeking, which is a mental process. I mean, you've heard it. If you've been at this for 25 years, you've heard it countless times that what's being pointed to is already here, for sure. Absolutely 100%. It's there. It really is there. But what you could say is like, but why isn't it in your experience? Well, it's not because of enlightenment, and it's not because of you, right? It's because of experience. It's because of the idea of experience that you're going to get another experience. I know that's hard to hear sometimes, because it's like, how to not orient to experience. Well, that's the trick. You can kind of learn not to, or you can deconstruct time again and again and again and realize there's no future in which an experience is going to appear. The only experience, so to speak, is this experience, right? The only appearance is this appearance. So how to stop that permanently? Well, you have to look into the nature of identity, right? Some ways to do that are through the emotion body, right? So if you feel this really strong sense of struggle and pushing and trying to force the hand of reality about enlightenment or understand it, or like all that energy, there's a lot of things you can do with it. You can focus it down into like a one-pointed approach. You can, deconstruct the seeker, or you can do all these things. But at this point, I would just say, really get curious about what emotion is under there. What emotion is underneath the seeking? When the seeking gets revved up in your day-to-day life, when suddenly your mind gets a hold of this idea, like, I have to get something to feel better. I have to wake up to feel better. I have to finally get that thing so I can finally feel better. Just look at what is happening in the moment. I'm not saying you're actively trying to avoid anything. It's just a habit we're in, right? That we get in. So wait, what's actually being felt here that's triggering the mind to do that thing it's so used to? That's kind of infuriating, but it's also familiar. Infuriating, but also familiar. It's kind of frustrating, or maybe a lot frustrating, but it's also familiar. Why do I default to the familiar? Well, because the familiar is, again, this is unconscious, but the familiar is predictable, and it's reliable to stabilize us into a mental state. Even if it's a state of seeking, even if it's a state of illusion, it stabilizes us there, which will pull attention out of the body. That's it. So when that's happening, put your attention to the body. Don't get and if analysis gets you twisted up in the mind, don't get analytical. Like, what am I feeling? What am I repressing? Those questions can be helpful unless you really get back into thoughts with them. If that's the case, just drop into the body. Just feel it. You don't have to know what's there. You don't have to know. Just feel. Stay with it. Yeah, and your mind will go, but I've been doing this for so long, right? That's what it is. That's the enticement of the comfortable, uncomfortable. The enticement of the familiar, misery. It's not even the misery is not a problem. It's the familiar, right? Who's it familiar to? That's the key, is to really get at that identity. Let's see. Okay, I'm tired of being in this waiting for life to start mode. Well, that could be something more along the personal spectrum as well. I don't know. Maybe you do have to take some action in life to address some area of your life, or something that's not having to do with spirituality. But yeah, waiting to start life, waiting for an awakening to start life, that's totally misunderstanding the role of awakening. It just is. It's like, man, it's like sitting in a wagon and trying to pull your own wagon along. and wondering why you're not going anywhere. Just realize the wagon, that's the key. See what's actually happening. And then it'll be easy to stand up and pull the wagon, I guess. But I don't want to give a promise about what happens after insight, because you can't know that. Everything changes in some way, and nothing changes in another way. But it's pretty ineffable. It's hard to describe how that is. So, yeah. Feel into that. I mean, there could be practical things to address in your life, of course, but there may not be either. That may not be what's happening. Just know applying the sort of applying relative strategies to awakening doesn't work. It just doesn't. And I say it over and over, right? Relative strategies meaning learning more information, mostly learning information, but mental seeking, I'm not even sure that works in the relative world so much. With this, again, it's about contact close, experience close to anything, everything, whatever's arising, whatever's appearing, experience close. And if it's not clear from there that there is no place to go, place to get to, there's no future that's outside of a thought, then you can do some of these sort of time deconstructions like I do in my videos occasionally, proving to yourself that indeed there is no time. There's no future in which something's going to appear. There's no future in which anything's going to be different than this. There's no such thing as different. There's only this. Yeah. And then, towards the end, you say 65 years of collecting information like a maniac. Yeah. I'm seeing that the ideal of knowledge is pretty thin. Yeah. Right. Knowledge is great in the relative world. This is just, it doesn't work that way in this world, in this setting. But maybe some really in-depth emotion work in a way you haven't done it. I don't know, circling, something like that could really break something loose, because it could be an emotional fixation in life that's just getting your attention so much if you don't realize it. So that's another thing to consider. Also work one-on-one with someone, like a non-dual facilitator. That can be helpful. All right. Some comments on that comment. A lot of people feeling that vibe. Okay, someone says, virtually everything about reality seems to be some way of redirecting your consciousness elsewhere. It's all about projecting some duality. Okay, well, it depends what you mean by reality, right? I would say everything about mind identification is exactly what that's doing. It's bouncing your attention around like a ping pong ball, and it's not comfortable. And you're projecting duality, process, fetch, quest. I've never heard that. It's good. Something elsewhere you must check, some cycle you must wait for. So that's all thought, by the way. That's not reality. That's not non-dual experience. That's not presence. That's thought that does that. All that. What you're talking about is the world of thinking, the world of mind identification. And that's what we're trying to address here, because it's uncomfortable as you describe here. That's the first step, is to see how deeply uncomfortable it is to identify with that world. Good question or comment. Good pointers, as always. Someone said to one of my videos, is it normal for things to get psychedelic when easing into this? Yeah, it can for sure. Both physically and visually, absolutely can. Doesn't always, but it can for sure. I haven't messed around with substances for almost 2 decades, but I get a similar taste of it when dropping into the body like this. Yeah, totally. How does simply dropping into the body sense unbind and do shadow work? How does it do that? In this setting, I'm inclined to say how is probably coming from the mind, because you don't need to know how. The mind thinks it needs to know how. It'll ask on and on about, how's this work? How's that work? And why? Why does dropping into the body work? Do you need to know that, or do you want it to work? It's like at the beginning of one of Kaplo Roshi's books, he said, this book is dedicated not to those who wish to seek, but those who wish to find. And knowledge is seeking, this kind of knowledge. So just drop in. But the world doesn't really disappear though, right? I mean, it's like they say, I mean, it's like the saying goes, rivers are still rivers, mountains are still mountains. I will say this. There's no way I can talk about this that can prepare you for how it is. And there's no way you can think about it that will prepare you for how it is. It's just true. And numerous people that I've interacted with as they go through all of this say it as it happens. I could have never expected this. How is this possible? Like, how is it that there's no physical form, yet there seems to be this functioning, this appearing? How is it that there's no actual wall there? I've heard that more times than I can count. So I can give you a kind of answer. The world doesn't really disappear. An illusion can't disappear. It can only be dispelled. I'll just say that much. Okay. Someone says, Jesus was dual. Okay. He worked for peace as well as helped in wars. And in exchange, he asked to spread Christianity, I suppose you mean. He helped in wars. I don't know about that. Is it true? I'm not a Christian theologian. Was he a soldier? I don't think he was, but don't know. Obviously, he was not conscious of his duality. Yeah, I don't know about that. Like I said at the very beginning of this, I read a quote from the Thomas Gospel. Also, from a scholarly standpoint, from what I understand, there's not a ton of agreement on exactly who Jesus was, and exactly what he said. Right? Anything that's been carried down through oral tradition and then written down 100 or more years later, you have to consider the fact that there was additional doctrine thrown in there that he may or may not have said, and so forth. I think the Thomas Gospel is the most direct pointing. And if he wasn't saying that, someone very realized was saying that, right? But it was all attributed to him. So I remember learning in undergrad that some scholars consider Thomas as, I don't know why. I don't know what the evidence behind this is, but that it's rather accurate, like the other synoptic gospels, which are Matthew, Mark, and Luke. That it's synoptic, meaning probably one of the most accurate. And the nice thing about it is it mostly is just sayings of Jesus, whereas the other gospels have his sayings mixed with a lot of other dialogue and narrative storytelling. So you can see how those, having been written down, years and years and years later, 100 or more years later, I think, could have a lot added in and changed and so forth. Oral tradition tried to preserve facts by repetition, but still, of course, they're not nearly as good as writing. So, but the Thomas Gospel seems like a collection of his sayings, which is, to me, the spirit of that seems like someone would have been really inclined to get the words right, Anyway. Someone said, thank you, you're welcome, Kristen. Someone said, I've heard from many sources of an upgrade of consciousness right now. That's polymorphous. So, a lot of shifting going on, that's for sure. A lot of changes in the world, a lot of people waking up. I would think probably more and more people waking up because of the internet, actually. It seems to accelerate it for a person being exposed to this stuff, for sure. So in the past, it was hard to find it, right? Most people hadn't heard of it, really. Everyone's heard of religion, but how many people have heard a direct pointing to non-duality from someone who has realized it? In the past, it would be extremely infrequent. There's all these stories of the Zen masters who were dedicated Zen monks for many years, decades, their entire life. And they went from temple to temple looking for a deeply realized master who could actually teach them. And can you imagine what it was like traveling around 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 1,500 years ago to find a Zen master in a hut somewhere or in a temple somewhere in a remote village somewhere? They didn't have MapQuest. They didn't have cars, public transportation, none of that stuff. So what an arduous thing it would be just on someone's, rumor that you're going to find an enlightened teacher somewhere, travel all that way, become disappointed, and go on about your way again and again and again. And that was someone who was absolutely dedicated to finding it. Here you can turn on YouTube and just come across it on accident, or my book will be recommended to you on Amazon, like someone mentioned the other day. Can happen in such a seemingly random way, but it has a potency for sure to interact with these kinds of videos and books like that, and interact with non-dual facilitators. So I think the rate of awakening is definitely accelerating. I'm rather sure of that. Okay. Someone asked, can meditating on the unquote no want work? No want. Anything can work if it works for you, right? So if you're asking the question, it must mean something to you. It must have some value. You must have some experience with that question, that statement, or more importantly, where it points experientially. So it may work well for you. Try it. I've had people tell me all kinds of phrases they've used to lead themselves back to clarity or presence that it just worked for them. And that may work well for you. Someone said, a recent download from a dream showed in very immediate and stark terms the terrible ramifications of the self-hatred which accompanied years and years of my life. The shadow work is truly vast, yes. And I admire you for doing this work, truly. Because what you're referring to when you think back over your life and you see how self-hatred has significant implications, all kinds of implications for all of us, right? Deep shame that's untouched, that's not integrated into the system. Emotional repression, it causes harm to ourselves and others, sometimes in subtle ways, sometimes in very overt ways. It can be hard to see that in ourselves. It can be a hard pill to swallow to realize that, but at some point, it's very healthy to realize that and mature and then do something about it. Yeah. So I respect your honesty, vulnerability, and willingness to do something about it. Ball smasher. All right. Said, okay, so I left a comment and YouTube deleted it. So here we go again. When I am mind identified, I constantly take myself to be each thought with its individual feel of me. It's like an imposter. And when I'm disidentifying at first, it's hard to see me, hard to find me, hard to distinguish the thought fake feel of me versus actual me. It's like the fake feel is overlaying the experience, and it's the only me I can find. Somehow, though, I'm able to find the real me and start distinguishing it from the fake one. That's where the magic starts to happen. Yeah, exactly. If you slow down enough, and if you're willing enough, and if you kind of question what's actually happening, you can see it. You can see the clarity. You know it's there. And you can see when the mind grabs, or when you grab the mind, or whatever. It's not really either exactly, but where the on-ramp is to the world of what I need, what I'm avoiding, what I like and what I don't like, who's a problem in my life, where I want to go with my life, where I want to get away from in my life. All of that getting revved up, you can see the on-ramp for that if you just look closely and don't get on it. Okay, this is Torgo. In the past, I feel that I was lost in language games. Yeah. My internal monologue trying to describe things to myself, actively describing sensations or narrating experiences. I think that's a kind of trap that we fall into. Yeah, a lot of people do that. Sometimes I still find myself lost wandering that labyrinth. You know, a lot of people do this, probably everyone to some degree. If you're really identified with thoughts, you may not even realize that's happening, which is also a thing. But just seeing it is helpful, you know. And then seeing what is it that triggers that? What is it that shoots me into the head? What is it that I'm bouncing out of? And it's something in the body, often a sensation. Yeah. But again, just seeing it, very helpful. Okay, this is Roy Cohen. Getting more in touch with that I am here sense lately. It's exhausting because in a way, the body-mind is still running off that programming. Trying to calm down the body-mind is a hopeless hamster wheel, and the only way out is through it. But goddamn, is it the most uncomfortable thing you'll ever have to feel? Yeah, there's a phase where it's like that, right? I even see myself exerting so much force trying to run from whatever this is that I hardly realize it now because there is such less identification with the body. Need to be careful and simply just rest into what is and trust what is happening. Yeah. Part of it is you can't really even fathom what we are, and how could that really be what I am? And how it is so perfect in the end, it just makes you want to cry forever. It was the heartbreak that never was. Yeah, so good. The massive heartbreak over an illusion. But it feels very real, just like the illusion felt real. Then you go right back into the hypnosis again. Well, not always. At some point that won't happen. And even forget about it in the first place. But it's like you never forget, really. That's right. That's exactly right. You never really forget. The flip-flopping can be intense. It can be. Just keep seeing it. See when there's resistance here. Stop. Drop into the sensations. Drop into the sense field. Drop into the body. Feel, feel, feel. Don't get on the mind road. Don't get on the on-ramp. Which one book of Dogen's life and teachings would I recommend? Maybe someone can put it in comments. I'm not the person to ask about that. I'm not a scholar and I don't read much. Okay. Mobius Trip said, it's not bliss. I said it that way. It's not bliss because there's an exclamation point. It's perturbing, another exclamation point. It's like ripples down deep that have never been felt before. Yeah. Again, like the previous comment, like a lot of comments recently, when you first start coming into contact with that deep, deep, deep stuff, it is, I can't give a word to it because if I say it's disturbing, is it really? I mean, that's a word, right? It's almost more disturbing than disturbing. Is it intense? Intense is a word. It's more intense than intense in a sense. But as you drop those labels, it really is just what's happening. And then when is a light not a light? When is a hand not a hand? When is a step not a step? Such a good koan. Good pointer. When is anger not anger? Okay. Ball Smasher asks, do you think people who are not interested in this also get more conscious and more awake just simply by existing? God, I'd love to wish that. I would love to, I'd love to believe that. But clearly, many people don't. Clearly, many people come into this world and maybe some of it's karmic, I don't know, but they come into contact with destructive forces or emotional patterns or violent tendencies or physical violence done to themselves in various ways, especially as children, and they just don't have the coping mechanisms, and they can really spiral downward, right, into becoming more and more unconscious, becoming abusers themselves, etc. I'm not saying everyone that's abused becomes an abuser. It's not true. But it definitely happens. They're out there, right? There are people who abuse others who weren't abused themselves, probably. But unconsciousness, it's prevalent. It's prevalent. Mind identification is the rule, not the exception. Do some people wake up just simply by existing? Yeah, I think so. Some people do wake up spontaneously. Yeah. Someone said, this is Joe Delatore, Thank you, Angelo. While walking in nature earlier today, I experienced how a feeling in my body about my body was the same as the experience of seeing leaves swaying in the wind on a tree right in front of me. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? The itch on my leg pulled my attention and caused a reaction, and was exactly the same moment of light and air in the leaves. That also pulled my attention and caused a thought reaction. In both cases, it became apparent and clear that me was indistinguishable from that. The itch and then the movement was illuminated by me, which simultaneously creating me, or while simultaneously creating me. Yeah, that's kind of how the selfing mechanism happens, isn't it? Of course, all of this understanding wasn't occurring then, but only upon reflection now. Amazing. Yeah, it is amazing. The description here is some clear non-dual experiences, and then seeing the selfing mechanism and how it functions, how it overlays that, how it pulls attention a certain way. Yeah. Again, seeing is key. Seeing clearly, seeing closely, being willing to see more closely, always. Do you use AI-generated artwork for the thumbnails? For most of them now, I do. I've used all kinds of stuff. I've done a lot of Photoshop myself, stock images, but yeah, lately I've used a lot of AI artwork. Midjourney. Alexander says, I had my awakening 3.5 months ago and have been trying to get the non-dual realizations since. 3 months. I like that. I like that tenacity. 3 months is fast. Recently, all horizontal lines in my perceptual vision flicker. Nice. Like if there's stairs or a brick wall, it's quite intense. Is this how the perception might begin to crumble? Oh, for sure. Yeah, I would say maybe before perception, the subject-object experience might start to falter. Keep working at it. You're doing great. So this is Joshua Hutt says, they're quoting me from the video. My quote is, the foundation of what you take yourself to be is disrupted. Then he said, I could say shattered. No, I said that. Sorry. The whole quote is me. The foundation of what you take yourself to be is disrupted. I could say shattered. Then he said, I would say freed up. The foundation of what you take yourself to be is freed up. Not sure about that. We might be talking about two different things. Yeah. I could say reality is freed up, but there's no foundation there in what I'm talking about, what I'm pointing to in this video. Freedom is freed up, but those aren't accurate either because reality just is. Freedom just is. They were never not free. There was just the distracting bending of the mind that can stop. Someone said, longer videos needed, sir. I love it. Jaguar focus. That's cool. Tezcatlipoca's animal is the jaguar. Thanks for the consistency. You're welcome. Yeah, I make a variety of all different kinds of videos, as you probably know. But I do make them all the time, every day. Yeah, and I do have a lot of long videos. If you want to watch the longer videos, go to the Double Barrel Non-Duality playlist, Interviews playlist, Awakening Stories playlist. Those are long. There's other long ones too. George Shepard says, are we making all of this up as we go along? Something's being made up. Yeah. And you can see through the illusion of that. That's as much as I can say. Pamela says, another thing that trips me up. If my brain goes offline and there's no one and nothing to reflect or remember anything, I'm just basically a dumb animal with a question mark. The thing about the selfing mechanism or the self structure is it looks through this lens that says everything is me. I'm doing everything, right? So when we perceive that that could stop happening, we would perceive that nothing could happen then. Nothing's going to happen. And in one way, that's true. Nothing does happen, but nothing's ever happened. But that's not really what you're talking about. You're kind of saying, would the practical aspects of life be taken care of? And I would say, yeah, they will, because they already are. And it's not the selfing mechanism doing it. So yeah. Someone said, do you disassociate sometimes anymore? Good question. Maybe sometimes I wish I could disassociate. No, I don't know. No. I would say probably no. Okay. Angelo, why do these short, intense reels either grab me like a magnet or repel me? This is Mrs. Just There to Learn. It's not personal because I appreciate you. Oh, I don't take it personally. I don't take any of this stuff personally. I promise. Still, it's like you, Angelo, are to be avoided. A thought says, scroll quickly. We don't want to hear this. Yeah, the mind does this for sure. Like reading a book, you can get to a chapter that's just triggering, and it's like, oh my God, I want to throw the book away, burn it, never want to go back, right? I want to never watch these videos again. Yeah, it's just how it goes. It's just the mind trying to push and pull on experience. Then she said, I have lived on the edge of my seat for nearly 2 years, soaking up your content. That's why I subbed. So why does it hit differently at times? It could be because it surprises you. When you sit down and go, okay, now I'm going to go watch a video, it feels volitional, like that self feels like it's in charge somehow. Sometimes, maybe when a short just comes across, it's like, oh my God, I'm not ready for that. Surprises you, takes you by surprise. Is it common? Yeah, I'm sure it is. What's happening? But as explained. It is an unwinnable game, and yet we express our perceived enlightenment through thought. Enlightenment has nothing to do with thought. And in a state of liberation, it's not a state. Let's say with liberation, with enlightenment being enlightened to itself, there's no need for thought whatsoever for that to be the case at all, and for it to be known clearly, experientially, let's say. There's no need for thought at all. There's no need to talk about it. There's no need to self-talk about it. It has nothing to do with thought. The words I make about it are really just to sort of transmit it. That's it. To have an effect. And I warn people, like caution people again and again against grabbing the words instead of just feeling the effect, or letting the effect have its way. Yeah. The Gringo Scott Productions says, thanks. You're welcome. Spiritually, some people seem to be totally off the rails from psychedelics. Rather than their ego becoming nothing, instead their ego ends up becoming everything, and they go around telling people that they're God. Everything is an extension of them rather than the other way around. Yeah, can happen. It's the raft analogy. When you have a raft, you need to cross the river. Cross the river, set the raft down. If you're carrying the raft around after that, something's being missed a little bit, or a lot. I have a question about the feeling of being in the body. There is this fundamental sense of being the body, although it's clear that this isn't true. But when being in the visual field and I notice the sense of separation from it, I see clearly that it's because of this sense of the body and that the bodily boundaries are my boundaries. So my question is, how can this sense of being separate through the body boundaries be dissolved? Do you have a practical practice or exercise to dissolve it? I have a lot of them. I have a lot of videos on it. Go to my Non-Duality playlist and just go through those videos. Pick one that you really like and use that approach. Any reason why you didn't mention the introductory series playlist for those who are new to all of this, but did mention the other two playlists for beginners? No reason. It was just what happened. So now we've already mentioned it, so I don't have to mention it again. There is an introductory series playlist that is probably the first thing I would point people to if they have no idea what any of this stuff's about. Is it normal for your anger to almost be funny the more you do these practices? Yeah, can be, for sure. It can be present itself as rather comical sometimes. You'll see every once in a while a meme video of someone just losing their, losing their shit over something silly, just a bad moment or whatever. It turns into a meme, someone screaming and yelling for no good reason. I'm sure if they have clarity afterward and look at that, they're just like, what in the world? It's kind of silly, right? But in the moment, it feels very real, feels justifiable. Okay. Someone says, finding the center. I keep coming back to the place in the back of my sinuses where cold air hits. Yeah, that feels like the center. Just feel into it and see where's the centerness of it. Where does center come in? There's feeling for sure. Now feel your ear. Why does that not have center to it? Now look at something across the room. Why does that experience not have center to it? Where's the centerness? There or not there? That kind of work can be helpful. DVD Mon says, I'm trying to remember to do subject-object exercises when I can. It seems like I can focus on both simultaneously, but I wonder if I'm just telling myself that. When I go back and forth, my sense is of a subject that is more felt with other senses, proprioception and touch, rather than when I see the object. The experience is wholly visual. So in that sense, they are hard to equate with one another. We don't have to equate them necessarily. I have a sense that simply switching between the two will eventually yield some insight, but at least initially they seem quite distinct. Yeah, that's one approach. You said, I wonder if I'm just telling myself that. You can focus on both simultaneously. No, I think that's definitely it's like a step for sure. And the mind's going to, it's going to do this with non-dual sort of practices. It's going to be like, no, you don't really see that. It's not really like that, right? Don't worry about the narrative thoughts. It's because they'll just get you distracted. Just keep at it. Nice work. AZ Cactus Flower said, definitely a wild ride. It is for sure. Liviu Klipa. Gosh, I don't know how to pronounce that. Okay. Liviu Klipa, maybe? Hi, Angelo. Is there something beyond the I am? Good question. 3 years ago, I had the experience of the ego dissolution where there was no I, no emotions or thoughts, or even the world. Just a pure sense of existence and void. Yeah, that's not uncommon to have a very deep awakening like that. That feeling was always in my experience 24/7. Now, is always in my experience 24/7 now, but it feels like there's something beyond that. Okay. There could just be that subtle self-sense left, because that can still try to stick around even when you described non-dual very clearly here. Unless it's really uncomfortable or something like that, that could be disassociation. But it sounds like non-dual. If it feels like there's something clearer beyond that, just look for any selfing mechanism, including the selfing tendency of mind that's making you wonder about that, right? If there's something beyond, where is that coming from? Is that a mere thought? Is it a sensation? Right? Because now you have access to all this without all the illusions in the way. So you have access. Go to it. Go right to what it is that's calling your attention. What does beyond mean? What does beyond mean anymore? Once non-dual is realized, there's no beyond. Right? At that point, the only thing could kind of be noticed is what's extra. What's extra? And that would be the self mechanism. And it can be very subtle. You may not even notice it most of the time. CPS Zen Run says, yes, at an early age, we learn to wear masks and display various personalities. Don't we? Okay, I have a video called You Can Trust the Process. Someone asked, other than the ability to return, I'm not sure what that means, how is this different from dementia? Realization is nothing like dementia. Well, it could, I guess you could probably find a way that it's like dementia, just like you could find a way that it's like mind identification or whatever. But yeah, dementia is defined by decreased abilities to process information, to concentrate, alertness, memory. You wouldn't, if you tested somebody who had deep realization, you wouldn't find, maybe if you test them in very, very specific ways, you could find changes in their memory, maybe, time perception. But you, like on a 30-point mini mental status exam or something, they would do fine, for sure. In fact, sometimes it's easier because the mind is quiet, so it's easier to process information. Yeah. Okay, someone says, Laura Hewitt says, a sound with a listener is never, quote, just a sound, I think. That's right. That's exactly right. We don't usually hear just a sound. When the mind identification process is underway, what's heard is a reflection of a sound. Heard, processed, thought about, all of it, yeah. By definition, sort of. But to really, really hear the sound, there is no hearer. And there's no location of the sound. And it's very clear and beautiful. Okay, I think I'm done for now. Thanks, everyone. I love your questions and comments. Appreciate it. Thanks for your channel support, by the way. Always appreciate that.